And now on Nights with Steve Price from the 50-Up Club, Christopher Zend.
Yep, Christopher's away tonight. We've got Joel Gibson on the line. How are you, Joel?
Very well, thanks, Steve.
Getting to the sharp end of this election campaign, we talked a lot to Christopher in the last couple of weeks about things like superannuation and pensions for our 50-Up Club members. But one of the areas I don't think's had enough attention during an election campaign is the fixed costs people have with utility bills right across the country. Doesn't matter what state you live in. We're going to concentrate tonight on electricity. Can you explain why, when we've got basically zero inflation, bank interest at 2% or lower, that we keep getting these massive increases in power bills?
Well, that's a very good question. No, I can't, and I can't get a good explanation for it from anyone connected with the industry either. I mean, they say their generation costs are rising, and that is a fact. Generation costs are rising, but I can't explain to you why that is. Given that we should be getting better, I would imagine, at producing power efficiently. And there is a part of that cost which is attributable to green schemes, but only a very small part. The largest part of the household bill is attributable to the cost of transmitting power to the electricity networks, and as we know, that's been out of control for many years. And even, the efforts of COAG over the past few years has failed really to do anything about it.
I had a look the other day at a water bill, which had suddenly gone from $65 to $600, which I couldn't work out. I still haven't rung them to find out why yet. I think it was some sort of deal I was on ended. The other confusion people have is, of course, people have gone off onto fixed discount deals that do have an end date on them, don't they?
Yeah, that's right. And actually, just on that question of water, Steve, it's a rare thing that we can actually tell our members this week that one of their bills is going to go down, at least for those people based in Sydney. Water bills are going to come down by an average of $100, and that's almost unheard of that we can make an announcement.
How's
like
that happened?
So, well, they just managed to, I guess, reduce the cost of getting it to you is usually what it's attributable to. But that announcement's just been made this week.
It might be, Joel, it's all falling out of the sky. It's free.
Quite possibly. We've had a lot of rain lately in New South Wales. No good news yet for Victorians, though, unfortunately. Their water's still substantially more expensive than in New South Wales, so nothing has improved yet there.
Neither party really addressing this in the election campaign. It sort of gets sucked into the debate about climate change and carbon taxes and emission trading schemes. But let's go through it. There is supposed to be, is there not, independent regulators in each state that assess the cost of power and whether power companies that have largely been privatised everywhere now, providers, can increase the cost. So how come that independent assessor always puts it up?
Well, that's right. There's a bit of a dog's breakfast, actually. There's a national regulator and there are state-based regulators in some states. Some states are completely deregulated and others are partially deregulated. But long story short, there's any number of regulators who are supposed to have been able to keep these prices down and they've failed. COAG got together in, I think it was 2012, 2013, in the Gillard, Martin, Ferguson days. It got together with the state governments and tried to change the rules around electricity pricing to deal with this issue. And here we are 3 years later. That's now bogged down in the courts. It's going to probably take another 6 months to a year before we see any result from it. And even then, we don't know whether we'll get a genuine reduction in prices. So politically, that absolutely, completely failed to deal with this issue. And the regulators, obviously, their hands are tied to some extent because they're working under the current regulatory framework, which the state and federal governments have tried and failed to reform.
You've got the state-by-state figures, certainly for New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia and Victoria in front of you. What does it tell us?
What it tells us is that South Australia's got it worse this July. It looks like prices are going to go up in South Australia by double digits.
Well, you know why. Labor government there is insisting on green energy.
Absolutely. They're leaders in the renewable energy sector, but they've failed to provide sufficient baseload power generation. They've taken their eye off the ball there. Labor and Liberal governments actually over the course of about 5 or 10 years, so they're all busily blaming each other for that.
That's a 12% increase.
That's a 12% increase, and South Australia, of course, is infamous already for having some of the most expensive electricity prices in the world. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're now on top of the world when it comes to the unit price of electricity.
And look, they've got a high unemployment rate in that state. They're having to get governments to prop up jobs. You'd imagine there would be a lot of people on social benefits. A 12% whack when you're on fixed income like an aged pension, or if you're a self-funded retiree, or if you're on welfare benefits, that's a huge amount of money.
They need it like a hole in their head. As you say, it's an older population in South Australia. There are a lot of people on pensions and fixed incomes in South Australia, and you know, disconnections are already at record highs because prices have doubled over the past decade all around the country. We're going to see hundreds, if not thousands, more people disconnected in South Australia in the next year because of these price increases. So AGL came out this week and said 12%. Origin came out after them and said just under 10%. I think it was 9%. But that's a pretty good indicator of where the rest of the field will be.
It's not as if you can do without electricity.
No, this is a basic, utility. Some would say a basic human right. It's not something. It's certainly not a discretionary spend. It's something people can't avoid, and especially when the supply charge, which is the bit of your bill that you cannot control. If you turn your appliances off at the power points, you only turn the heater on when it gets really cold. You can control your usage portion of your bill to some extent. The supply charge is fixed. You've got to pay that every day, and that's the one that's really shot up over the past decade because of these inflated electricity network costs.
New South Wales AGL announced an average $172. Is that a year increase for customers?
That's right. It's about $172 on average in New South Wales. AGL's gone out first and announced that. The other big guys and the mid-tier retailers are still to follow. So we wait with bated breath to see what they're going to do. But that's it, $172 on top of a bill which has already doubled in a decade, and no one's wages are going up by that amount unless they're really kicking some goals. So it's going to cause a lot of pain, especially for those people who can least afford it, and it's just going to cause a lot of frustration generally because there's just been a patent inability at every level to deal with this issue over the past 5 to 10 years.
I know you've been running some campaigns to try and help save people on electricity prices through the 50Up Club. People should just go on to the website 50upclub.com.au. Great to catch up with you, Joel. Thanks a lot, mate.
Thanks very much, Steve.
Joel Gibson.